So I think they're a really good example for why you got to go where the puck is going, not where the puck has been. So it's very important that we continue to keep up to date on these legislative updates and see what's going on in other states, because things like social consumption and home grow, they're not here right now, but undoubtedly they will become a part of the Florida system, and the framework for that is being worked on as we speak. So very important to definitely be looking ahead of where things are going, and this next group is the CEOs that definitely were looking where the puck is going and not where the puck had already been, and that's where they're at, where they are right now. I have long, impressive summaries for each of them, but I think it's probably better for each of them to actually give a little summary of themselves. So I'm going to call out the moderator, Gerry Greenspoon, and he could give a little summary of himself, and each panelist will give them a little bio on themselves.
All right, let's see if we have our, hi, I'm Gerry Greenspoon, and allow me to introduce myself, and I'll call up the panel in 1 second. I'm a co-founder, co-managing partner of Greenspoon Marder. We're a national business law firm, and one of our areas of practice and specialties is the cannabis industry, and we're fortunate to have some terrific attorneys, practitioners in the industry throughout the country, in Colorado and Arizona and Oregon, California, and of course Florida and other states. It's a fascinating industry, cutting edge legal work, quite complex. You're going to hear from some really great, interesting people in a second regarding how complex it can be. So, with no further ado, let me bring out our great panel. First of all, we have Kim Rivers. Kim, come on up. And have you introduce yourself in a second. And Brady where's? All right, Brady, come on inside. Michelle, you find him? Find Brady, please. And how about let's see, we got John. Huh? Okay, we got two of our panelists in hiding. Well, Kim, it's just going to be you and I.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
We can handle it. All right, there we go. How are you? We got Brady Cobb, CEO of One Plant, and we have John Tipton of AltMed. John, how are you? Good. And as we just to begin with, why don't we have each of you just say a couple of words about your position and your company. Just introduce yourself so our audience gets to know who they're hearing from.
Good morning. How's everybody? Good. Kim Rivers. I am the CEO of Trulieve. We were the first fully licensed medical marijuana company in the state of Florida. We opened in 2016. We currently have grown to an astonishing rate, and that's some things that we can talk about today. We currently have 2,800 employees across the state of Florida. We've got 37 dispensaries open. Number 38 hopefully coming this week in Panama City, although y'all didn't hear that from me. And we have a large cultivation footprint, about 1,700,000 square feet of cultivation currently in production, and we manufacture approximately 250 products that we distribute through our stores. We went public on the Canadian Securities Exchange about a year ago. It's been a wild ride. That's a whole nother topic of conversation, but we've expanded our operations to Massachusetts, Connecticut, and California. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Kim. Brody?
Good morning, Brady Cobb, CEO of One Plant. We are a MMTC license in Florida, formerly known as Three Boys Farms. We are an organic farm based in Ruskin, Florida. Currently 24,000 square feet of greenhouse there, and we are also under construction on a 33-acre parcel in Indiantown where there'll be 54,000 square feet of greenhouse and 64,000 square feet of a double-stacked indoor building. Rolling out our first set of stores under the One Plant brand. First store opens first week of November in Boynton Beach. Second store in Jack's Beach, right across from the gentleman to my right store. And we also launched our statewide home delivery. We focused very hard with the assistance of my chief strategy officer, who comes from a logistics background, on a home delivery model. His line to me was always, if people have been getting narcotics delivered to them by their dealers for the better part of 50, 60 years, why are we bucking the trend? Amazon has shown us that everyone...
Don't hold back, Brady.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, we're all in this business violating Schedule 1, so let's at least acknowledge that. And if you look at it from a delivery model, for the cost of building 2 stores, I can put 50 trucks on the road. It's a nice EBITDA model, and Amazon has shown us people want that. So we're very excited about it. We've also expanded. We are in California with Northern Emeralds, and we also have a chain of stores in California, One Plant stores as well. And we're finalizing the closing of our dispensaries in Michigan.
Awesome. John?
Hi, John Tipton. I'm the CEO for AltMed Florida Move Products. We currently operate out of Apollo Beach, Ruskin area. We have about 100,000 square feet of cultivation under roof right now. We're working on another 110,000 square feet that will be coming online in stages over the next year. We currently have 9 dispensaries open. We open up Fort Myers hopefully next Saturday if the Department of Health cooperates. And after that will be Deerfield Beach, Lakeland. We'll have another 4 more hopefully in November, and then another 4 or 5 in December. So we're scaling up fairly quickly.
Thank you. Well, you kind of hit upon what I wanted to kind of discuss first. I think everybody would be really interested in hearing about these 3 companies. And they're, as you know, in Florida, each one is a very large company, well-funded and well-capitalized. Each one may have their own different business model. You've just kind of touched upon that. What made you choose a business model that you are implementing? Of course, everybody is fully integrated. They are growing, they're processing, and they're selling. And John, just describe again what's a business model for your company?
Sure. Yeah, I think our model probably is a little different than most, in that we started out, we got our license under Plants of Ruskin, and we are still the majority owner in the business. We brought in AltMed as a partner, and that partnership was really developed more about the product development and things of that nature than it was really bringing in capital, although they did supply some capital to us. And so far we've been able to grow everything organically, have not brought in any outside capital, haven't had to finance anything yet.
You're looking to continue to expand your footprint on the retail side? Or?
Absolutely, yeah. We're hoping to have our 40 dispensaries open by the end of 2020. My goal was 20 by the end of this year. I think I'm going to fall a little short, unfortunately, but I think we'll be close.
And Brady, you kind of touched upon you have limited number of stores and really focusing on the home delivery. How do you do that in such a large state?
So, I mean, 2 focuses. Number 1 is the most important thing to me is our key ingredient in any of our products, which is our flour. So we have a very keen eye and a very keen focus on our flour and the flour quality. Since we've taken over back in April, we've gone fully GMP and GAPA certified at our cultivation facility and our processing facilities. Partnered with our team out of Humboldt County, as well as my grow team in Florida. I'm very proud to have those guys work with us. We've got Chris Keller, who ran Incredibles. I've got P-Bud and ChemDog, some of the guys that founded all the Chem-D strains. So a really amazing team. There's quite a bit of cultivation between the 2 of us, knowledge in Ruskin. And core ingredient being the most important thing, but we're going to open 15 stores in Florida by the end of 2020. If you put those stores on a map and draw a circle around them, you'll see that they are drive time centric, meaning they are set up for home delivery. How do you do it across the whole state? You bring in folks that have done it for companies like Amazon and Coca-Cola, which is what we've done. So I have an amazing team behind me that sat down, tackled the curveballs as they've been thrown at us, and the patients and customers, the response has been tremendous. I mean, we budgeted X amount for delivery, and we've gone like 10X. So as we've had to kind of scale back product until we get Indiantown up and running, we're very excited about it. But again, we're looking to have the best flour in Florida, but both at our Indiantown facility and our Ruskin facility. So while I may lose in volume, we're going to make up in flower quality.
And Kim, you seem to be, well, you're the leader in the state, I think, on the retail sector. You're happy with that strategy?
So far, so good. A couple of things. Given, look, and I know that there's probably a lot of folks who have a lot of varied opinions with respect to the current structure that we have in Florida today. We are simply, we have to play by the rules that are given to us in the state, and we took very seriously what we viewed as really a mandate from the state early on in this program to provide access to patients. And so that has been our number one focus and goal. And just to kind of maybe, kind of give you all a little bit of history, although it hasn't been that long since the program's been up and running in Florida. When the program first came out of the gate, there was a lot of question with respect to expansion. There was a lot of question with respect to whether or not this program was actually going to move forward at all from the legislative perspective. And so what we knew, or what we thought we knew, is that we had to get out there and get get safe and effective medical cannabis in the hands of as many patients as possible, so that organic word of mouth and that quite frankly, voter lobbying effort by you all and by us collectively could become more real to our politicians in the state of Florida. Because really, the expansion of this program has come because they have heard from, and they have experienced personally via a loved one or someone that they've known, or in some cases themselves, the wonderful healing properties of medical cannabis. And so really, this is kind of we're right on the cusp of legislative session. Committee weeks are meeting currently, so I'm going to take this question. I am going to plug and ask for help, because we in Florida still are in a fight for patient access. And I don't want anyone here, I know that you see Trulieve and we've got 38 stores, and Kim, what are you talking about? That seems crazy. But I'm telling you, if you were in Tallahassee, which I happen to live there, over the last 3 weeks, the testimony that you would have seen firsthand in front of our legislators is absolutely appalling. The messaging is that marijuana is dangerous. The messaging is that we need to restrict it and we need to scale it back before recreational. It's just trying to put the genie back in the bottle. And we've got a very prominent a representative who is hell-bent on limiting THC levels in this state. So again, I know, again, that many of us may not be 100% happy with the current system, but going backwards in terms of restricting access is certainly not where I don't think any of us want to go. And so I would just ask that everyone be engaged through this session and don't sleep and think that, we're past that and recreational is a given and this is just going to happen naturally. It's not going to happen, and it certainly has the potential of going backwards if we're not involved and engaged with our elected officials. So I know that really wasn't the question, but I really wanted to make sure that I said that.
But it's really critical to all of us, and I believe everybody in this room is up pretty much on the same page. We all have to be somewhat activists in the area to make sure that we continue to travel in the right direction and not go backwards, as you just suggested. Yep. Let me just stick with operations a little bit for now. What's your capacities for grow? Where do you grow? What type of grow facilities do you have, and where's it taking place, and what's your capacity? I guess we can start with John. Okay,
sure. Yeah, we grow in Apollo Beach, as I said earlier. We are an all indoor grow. We currently have, as I said, roughly 100,000 square feet. The footprint for the property will allow me to build up to roughly 300,000 square feet, which I believe in the next 18 months we'll be there. As I said, we'll be at 220,000 square feet by this time next year. I think we're all struggling a little bit with the flower. Now that it has come on board, trying to supply the patients with the amount of flower that they would like to have, and I'm not sure any of us really know where that number is yet, because I don't think we've been able to actually achieve that number we've seen a
Do you mean
tremendous uptick.
you mean you have oversupply or not enough supply?
No, we don't have enough supply. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. We're trying to. We've been averaging roughly 1,200 ACE per dispensary, and are still running out a couple of days before the next delivery comes.
And you are an organic grower as well. Is that what you
Yes.
described? Brady, where are your facilities and your capacity?
We're just down the street in Ruskin, Florida, our current operational facility, which is 6,000 square feet of veg, 18,000 square feet of flowering, segregated into 3,000 square foot rooms, so we can harvest on a continual basis. It is an organic farm, so as that's current facility, that's the facility we inherited when we acquired the license. We are building and went and sought out a 33-acre parcel that we acquired last year in Indiantown, Florida, so just west of Stuart, Florida. Fully entitled, about 18 usable acres. So we are 54,000 square foot greenhouse. The frames are up. Those will be segregated into smaller rooms as well, so we can continue harvest. And then there's a 64,000 square foot tilt-up building that's going up next door. We have the power upgraded to that facility, and I have 4 more pads laid out where I can do 4 either greenhouses or indoor facilities additionally on that building with enough water and power. It was formerly a fish farm, the facility. So that will be our 2 key locations. They're kind of on the same latitude for redundancy purposes. It's very rare to see a hurricane go straight. Let me just knock on wood. Yeah. So we'll find wood somewhere before this is over. There we go. There we go. So for us, it was, a lot of our core of our retail footprint and our patient base is in South Florida. So it's a nice drive time from South Florida down there. And they also act as delivery hubs at present.
Kim?
Yeah, so we've got a very large cultivation footprint. It's a mix between greenhouse and indoor. It's approximately, at this point, 1.7 million square feet. We started with true indoor, and have evolved our grow patterns and our grow style over time. We started in much smaller rooms, and we've expanded out as we've gotten more comfortable. One of the things that we are very passionate about is making sure that we have plenty of mother space available in our cultivation facilities. Traveling around the country, I can say that that's one area that is key in terms of genetic preservation. We also have a 20,000 square foot facility in Clearwater that's actually our R&D, genetics R&D facility. That's where we do all of our pheno hunting and crossbreeding projects. And then in addition, we just launched our tissue culture facility, which we're very excited about as well. So, we scale, grow with expansion. And so we just brought online 72,000 additional square feet of indoor grow. We also announced, I think 2 months ago publicly, that we closed on a piece of property that will allow for 750,000 square feet additional indoor grow. Our grows are primarily located in Quincy, Florida. We're very proud to be in Quincy, Florida. It's one of the minority communities in the state of Florida. We purposely decided to locate there. Similarly, in Holyoke in Massachusetts, which is a majority minority community, similarly, we purposely located there. So one of our tenets is to just offer increased employment for underserved communities within the industry, and yeah, we're continuing to grow all the time. I will let everyone here know we had a huge flower shipment this morning. So I'm just saying, Miami's right down the street, the Miami store. So if anybody needs anything, just let me know. But we're continuing, right? Like John said, I think with flower coming on board in March, a lot of our grows were set up initially, and a lot of our genetics were scaled specifically towards oil production. And so to make that switch to flower, we started that, seeing that train coming down the tracks really in late 2018, but it takes time, right, to change those processes. And when you're growing strains that are more specifically for high quality flower, it's a little bit different in terms of the yield that you're going to get per square foot, and so that's been definitely a bit of a challenge. And also, right, there's only a certain percentage of the flower of the plant that you're using for high quality flower. So it's been definitely a bit of a learning curve, but we're getting there. And my team is very focused on providing the highest quality, continuing to provide the highest quality flower in the state.
You actually just jumped onto something that I did want to ask you about, which is about flower, since that was just permitted by law and regulation only recently. What kind of impact has that had on your business, if it has had any impact yet? Brady, anything?
I mean, it's completely transformed the market in Florida. I think that's probably an understatement. As Kim said, prior to that, everything was set up for extraction, so it was largely biomass driven. Perfecting and curing flower properly, and actually most growers don't focus on the winemaking. The winemaking is flower. Anyone can grow good grapes. It's actually having the proper cure process in place and ultimately getting the flower to shelf and preserving it, because each pheno is going to respond to temperature, air, light differently. So that's where we're very lucky to have the team we have. We're also very lucky to have access to our friends and our partners in California at Northern Emerald, who, those guys routinely are probably 5 to 7% of the premium flower sales in California. They just sold 80 pounds at $35 an eighth wholesale, north of 32% THC, and they're getting 72 grams a square foot. So as I can begin to implement their practices into our facilities here in Florida, flower is the seller. I think, none of us saw a vape crisis coming, or a perceived vape crisis, I should say, and I'll leave it at that.
We'll get to that.
Perceived vape crisis, because you compare it to tobacco, but we'll leave that one where it is. Nobody really saw that one coming, but it's certainly, if there's anything that's I think it'll be a net long positive for the regulated vape markets. We've already seen that in our California stores. Vape sales are actually up after these CDC warnings, because people are not buying things on the black market anymore. But I also think it just confirms that having a focus on your core ingredient flower, but it also means all of us have a lot of scaling to do, because the existing facilities, the way they were set up, were not set up to be able to do high quality flower on a regular basis.
So set up originally for extraction, since that was the limitation, and then you actually had to go in midstream and modify your practices.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I would just, obviously the practices too, and it's interesting because when you, across the country, it's funny because as we're expanding, right, there's certain parts of the country you go in and they're pumping humidity into the rooms, right? Well, we're trying to get it out of the rooms, and so it's not a one size fits all situation, and it does vary. Extreme. I think there's extreme variation depending on where you're growing, even within the state. I would think from north to south, and then and certainly with respect to the type of grow you've set up. And so it is getting things dialed in and making sure that we're able to really get as much high quality flower as possible. But yes, there's definitely tweaks.
So actually, two of the companies here, Kim, I'm not sure about yours, are growing organically. Strictly, Kim, is yours as well?
So we don't use the label organic because that's actually not applicable to cannabis, and we're a publicly traded company, so we don't say organic. But I think all of us, the state of Florida, is very strict with respect to what can and can't go on plants.
On the technical sense, I don't think that any of us can really say that it's organically grown, because that's a USDA type designation that.
Where regulations don't really exist with respect to our industry. Is it more expensive? Is it a more expensive method that you utilize, say, than, for example, in other states that?
Yes.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's not. I mean, none of us are blasting plants with high-powered chemicals that would kill anything and everything, right? So it's definitely more expensive, and it takes a lot of more time, attention, and care when you're not using those pesticides on your plants.
And does it result in a greater acceptance, perhaps, by the consumer, or whatever's available is what's purchased?
I mean, at present, there's definitely craft connoisseurs. There's connoisseurs that want to see, and the patient population and consumers are now having additional choices and can go and try different things as the market's expanding. And again, I mean, what are we, 6, 7 months, 8 months into the flower market?
March.
Yeah, so we're kind of, we're in the first inning, maybe the top of the first inning.
Interestingly, also in Florida, another unique restriction is that there's a lack of a wholesale market, meaning these huge companies with lots of facilities can't sell to anybody else except for themselves. Does that create a challenge, or at this point you're selling everything you could produce anyhow?
I mean, I'm not going to speak for Kim but I can just, or John, but with the stores opening and the appetite for flower, it's kind of, you need to sell what you have. If they want to expand a wholesale market, that's great, but I think for the short term, keeping up with current patient requests and patient needs is primary focus. I don't know how much is out there, or bandwidth would even be out there for a wholesale market, given flower shortages are pretty known throughout almost all providers, at least for a day or two here and there. I don't think we're at a mature enough space right now to actually have a vibrant wholesale market.
Yeah, and there are mechanisms for I'm sorry. There are mechanisms for wholesale. If an MMTC has a crop failure, they can petition the department to buy wholesale. That has happened, and we've been able to help out a couple of MMTCs over time. Unfortunately, as Brady said, as we all scale up, I think that there's less and less opportunity for anyone to be able to help out their neighbor. We're kind of all struggling just to try to keep up enough product or so.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add is that I could see, certainly depending on, and this would be future looking, not current, because I would tend to agree, but in the future, depending on what kind of changes we may see to the structure with respect to whether or not other businesses are able to participate in the supply chain, which there certainly has been talk around. Specifically, I mean, I think in the last panel they talked about, there's litigation currently around the vertical nature of the industry. And so, if in fact there are additional, small business entry points into the supply chain, I would think that along with that we may see wholesale opportunities in the future. That's something that would make kind of logical sense. So I think I think that the market in Florida is certainly still evolving also, and I think we're going to continue to see changes. I would expect, assuming and if and hopefully when adult use and recreational comes on board, that we'll have additional opportunities for product expansion and potentially wholesaling at that point.
Would you say that your companies are prepared for the possibility of the change in the law through the judicial system? Is what's occurring right now? How do you guys feel about that? Anything to prepare for, or business as usual?
I mean, I think you kind of got to keep your head down and operate. I mean, if we sat around and waited for the Florida Supreme Court to deal with the Redner decision, which, who knows when that briefing schedule is going to get put out. I mean, probably summertime next year. Then you're looking at a recreational amendment on the ballot in November of 2020. Like, that's the one I'm focused on more, because it's as we're scaling up our Indiantown facilities, as all of us are scaling up. We've seen flower shortages with a patient population of under 400,000. When you bring on the largest tourist destination in the world for a potential adult use market, it's going to get interesting very quickly from a product standpoint. So given that we can't go out and buy wholesale, we're going to have to all scale up very quickly. So if there's something I'm focused on as a recovering lawyer, the courts are going to do what they do. We're going to watch it and pay attention. But if there's something, the big thing the elephant in the room that I'm staring at is a potential recreational amendment or adult use amendment that is, I would think, is going to, based on recent polling, barring something crazy, has a pretty solid shot of advancing.
Agreed. Solid shot. Interesting to see. Let's touch upon the vaping issue.
Vapegate.
Kind of scary what you read about, and hard to fully understand, not really recognizing the source. But you did touch upon something which I want you to talk about it again, make sure that the audience hears it, is that some of the source of the problem we do know, as you discussed.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to look at it there hasn't been, I believe there's one that's in question in either Washington State or Oregon, but the balance of the cases have not come from the legal market. So it's all black market vapes that are marketed, as somebody on the last panel was talking about, the prices in California in dispensaries, retail dispensaries, can be ridiculous with the taxes they add on and stack on. So a lot of people are looking at the black market. There's no regulation on how those products are made. There's no QR codes. There's no testing. There's nothing. So in a regulated marketplace, there hasn't been any cases. There hasn't been any in Florida where we're sitting. There's one that they're trying to figure out if there was contamination in the actual hardware. But it's ultimately, I think it's a net positive for the regulated market. I'm very active in Washington, D.C., and have been up and back and forth up there for the last 4 years. When I started, we couldn't get a meeting with hardly anybody that wanted to listen. Now it's and I'm happy to talk about that later in the panel, but this issue came up when I was up there last week. And I kind of looked at a couple of very key senators on the Republican side and said, you can't yell at me about vaping issues when you won't even regulate us. I'm the only guy who's hired lobbyists for the better part of 4 years to go and beg to be taxed and regulated. So you can't now look at me and tell me that we have a vaping problem. No, you guys need to get your heads out of the sand and actually pass a States Act and let the states properly regulate it without having this Schedule I issue. So,
Great. Hey, have a great lobbying team in DC for you to speak with as well. We're on it. We all agree, as you can hear from the audience.
Yeah, we use
Pushing
BGR.
hard.
I'd love to work with you. We work with BGR Group, which is Haley Barber's group in DC.
Now, one other, I guess the last item that you guys are probably waiting for regarding products is edibles.
Oh, edibles.
Where do you guys, where do we stand on that, or what's going on?
Oh, gracious. I have a beautiful kitchen ready to go. It's about 10,000 square feet. It is fantastic, and we'll be launching when edibles are allowable in Florida. We'll be launching with a full product line. So we can't wait. We've onboarded partners. We're sitting on go, have been sitting on go. One of the things that I'll just mention is with our current regulatory environment, when you have something like a vaping crisis that comes, just politicians in general tend to be very reactionary. And so we'll make forward progress, start to make some forward momentum, then something happens, and it all is like squirrel, right? Like it's just you completely go off track and go back to the left. And so now one thing that I will agree with is that I do believe that our regulators are now back focused on testing regulations, which is something that I think it's absolutely appalling and ridiculous that the state has not had robust testing regulations for the balance of this program. And it just is shocking to me. Yeah, and then of course, there's the whole dosing thing. But so I think that what we're going to see out of our regulators is that the next piece of rulemaking should be testing. Embedded in that testing are testing requirements for edibles. Then after that, we should see edibles. But now, keep in mind, and as a friendly reminder, we have legislators who are trying to cap THC to 10% across all products. Okay, so that is the environment in which we're operating. And so whereas I thought that we had some good support and momentum from the legislature coming out of about 2 sessions ago, where they were very frustrated with the rate of rulemaking and kind of what was happening, that has since seemed to retract a bit. And so the only other possible expediter with respect to edibles, if we don't see rules come through, would require a statutory change, because right now, per statute, it specifically states that the Florida Department of Health has to pass rules. And so that's where we are. Trust me, I think everyone in this room would like to see edibles, and I think that it's going to be the next big disruptor for our market and, quite frankly, for our businesses and our supply chain. So we're ready, and we're excited about it, but we have to wait for rulemaking.
It's definitely frustrating when our legislators refuse to listen to the will of the people.
Well, in this case, it's not the legislature. It's actually it's the Department of Health. So call, email, send people. I don't know, but again, this is where they need to hear from the patients and from the people, because it's right now kind of at the bottom of their list and it's an afterthought, right? And they're thinking that would be something nice for people to have, but that it's not required, when in fact it was absolutely put into statute and it is the law. So it is required, and I think that there just needs to be a little bit of a mindset change there.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's been about 18 months.
18 months.
Yes, I think we all.
I've had a kitchen for 6.
Yeah.
Yes.
I submitted proposed draft rules. I think we all did last October.
Yeah, we had a contest on the Florida symbol, just to give them some ideas.
So since we know that we don't expect a Supreme Court decision for a while, so we continue business as usual, which is what you have to do, and you aptly stated. Do we have any prediction of any possible new legislation this year coming out of this legislature? Anybody have a thought on that?
I don't necessarily have a prediction, but I tell you what I think would be smart for the legislators. I don't think they will do it, because I think the push is closer to what Kim is talking about. We thought we had put the whole 10% THC thing to bed last year with good science. It is, as Kim said, rearing its head again. So we really need to pay attention to that. But what I really think legislators should do, if they were being smart, would be to get ahead of the recreational thing and pass some recreational bills, even if they're implemented over time, so that it doesn't end up back on the ballot to where there's another constitutional amendment that, as we have seen, constitutional amendments are really difficult to work around, where if legislature would pass rules, then it's much easier for
much
them
quicker.
to adjust.
Well, and
as
that's
on
what,
the
I mean,
fly.
quite frankly, that's what Illinois did, right? I mean, Illinois was the first state in the country to pass recreational via the legislature as opposed to a ballot initiative, and that program, we'll see. I mean, it goes into effect January 1st, so it'll be interesting timing because I think we'll be able to potentially look to that as a possible model. But, you know, it's being touted as one of the more inclusive and robust recreational programs in the country. So we'll see, and maybe that could be a model. But again, I think that with the fact that we're dealing with one body that doesn't seem interested at all in a move forward, and in fact seems to be more trying to go the other direction, I think the most likely outcome, unfortunately, this session is likely a stalemate. And I hate to say that. I'm not trying to be pessimistic. That could potentially be the best outcome if instead the alternative is a reduction in product availability and in caps with respect to you know, THC levels. You know, I would say that I think we could all agree that it's better to have nothing than it would be to have that. So we'll have to watch it like we always do, but again, I think that what you have is, and something to remember in each of these markets in each of these states, is you've got folks who are architects of the programs in the states in which they live. So they become very dug in and very passionate about that program because it's their legacy as a lawmaker. And it becomes, I would say, difficult, right, to have conversations sometimes and progress things outside of those original constructs, unless and until, like in Florida, we have term limits. So, you know, there's just a little bit of time, you know? So sometimes we have to just kind of wait it out and know that sometimes a win is nothing as opposed to a step backwards.
We're going to touch on a couple more topics. Just before we run out of time, just a quick show of hands. Does anybody have questions that they'd like to ask the panelists? Okay. Yes? Okay, well, I'll reserve a couple of minutes, okay, for that. But let me switch to federal law for a minute. And we have one really interesting bill that's going through Congress now. It's known as the Safe Banking Act. It's already passed through the House. And of course, the challenge now is to get it passed in the Senate, where the Republicans do have a majority. And I think at this point it's unknown. But you guys excited about the possibility?
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
how much of a change would that be?
I was there last week, and I was there again 2.5 weeks ago. So the Senate is moving. It's moving. It's going to be an interesting path forward. Unfortunately, a lot of the oxygen is getting sucked out of D.C. with this whole impeachment inquiry. We did go meet with Senator Crapo and Senator McConnell, and the thought process is they're going to try to move it before the impeachment thing would really kick into high gear in February and March. So we're going to try to get it out this year, whether it's attaching it to another bill or going a different route without having, because if you look at the composition of the Senate Banking and Insurance Committee, it's not cannabis friends. So we're looking at trying to attach it to something and broker a deal to actually get it out. You know, SAFE is a very interesting bill. It doesn't include capital markets per se, but we believe we can achieve some level of capital markets, or at least investment bank and pension fund access, allow us to get some proper funding without these dilutive deals you got to do in Canada, where we can actually get it via FinCEN, updated FinCEN guidance, which safe banking will require. But the bill that I've actually had an opportunity to help draft with Senator Gardner, and the one that I think is ultimately going to be one that'll have the biggest impact that will move in 2020 is the States Act. States is one that could actually harmonize this giant gap between federal and state law, and ultimately give us the opportunity to kind of operate in the sunshine a little bit. It's a positive step in the right direction, but let's be clear, SAFE is by no means a slam dunk. They're going to do some changes to it in the Senate, which is they're reasonable changes, but that then opens up the conference process back in the House. Yep. And if you could believe this, it's honestly not Republicans that are the problem. It's largely some Democratic senators that are running for president that are a problem, that want to use this as a bully pulpit. And it's ultimately they're trying to access and add on a lot of issues that are very important, social justice issues. They need to be fixed. But the message we're trying to preach is we need incrementalism. We need keep winning.
You need to take one step
at
a time.
Don't take
just move forward.
Take the
Is that
win.
correct?
Yeah, I think, I mean, just to echo Brady, so we've had, lobbyist representation in DC for quite some time as well. And then I just joined the board of the National Cannabis Roundtable organization, which is a group of national players that have banded together. I agree and echo everything that he said with respect to likelihood of passage. I will say that I was and remain, I know it's getting less of a chance, but optimistic. I was really hopeful that we would be able to pass a standalone piece of policy on cannabis, because that in and of itself is a watershed moment for the industry, and just from where we are. Unfortunately, I think it's starting to look like it's going to be more and more an add-on as opposed to a standalone bill in the Senate anyway. But I'm looking forward to a good conference product, and really from Trulieve's perspective, a company like ours, we have always focused on very strong business fundamentals. We are self-funded by our founder group, and so we, similarly to John, haven't accessed a lot of capital through the public markets, but what we do have is strong financial statements. I've always said that, look, when I go to bed at night, I don't want to have to worry about having a company that can make payroll, a year or 2 years from now. I want to make sure that employees who come to work with us have good, steady jobs, that they can grow in a career and have an actual career in cannabis. So that's been very important to me. But what's come along with that is that we can't, even though we have strong financials, we can't access good loan terms. We can't, I can't issue bonds at decent rates. We issued bonds earlier this year that were high yield, that had some warrants, which by the way are the best in the industry to date. A lot of companies have had to do very dilutive deals where there's, it's kind of this lend to own strategy that, death spiral financing. Thank you, Brady. That where these big, really, it's predatory lending at a very high level, right? Where companies are issued tranches of debt that then are convertible into equity, so that if they're not able to make their payment, i.e., if the capital market prices go down, which we've of course seen over the summer, they're not able to draw future tranches. They're not able to continue to fund their businesses. The equity converts, and guess what? All of a sudden, there's an ownership shift in the actual company.
Is that the?
Yeah, they short you on the way down. So it's a very frustrating space to try financially, to do business
running
in.
a large business.
So it's really hard.
Think about this. This is the biggest thing, and Tim Seymour and I just from CNBC just did an op-ed on this on CNBC. If you're a U.S. company employing U.S. persons and workers and serving U.S. patients cannabis, you only can list in Canada, and you cannot access traditional banking. If you are a Canadian company only selling in Canada and growing in Canada and employing Canadians and giving product to Canadians, you can list in the United States and bank in the United States. That's
up.
the current state of federal law.
Right.
Well, gee, that's logical, isn't it?
Makes total sense.
Yeah, right. That's the result when politics.
This is cannabis,
are
is all I keep
involved.
telling myself. Like this gets a chapter in the book.
Welcome to Canada.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really an amazing panel. I hope everybody was really interested. Do you mind if we let a couple people ask some questions? Anybody have a question for the panel? Yes.
Oh.
Hold on, we need 3 hours for that.
Yeah. Let's get lunch first.
What's that?
No, 280 will not be part of
No.
SAFE. No.
Unfortunately.
No, it's not. No,
I tried to add on capital markets and was shown the door.
Yeah. Yes, the Safe Banking Act is a game changer, I believe, in and of itself, and it's one piece, but it would be a great step, start momentum.
I personally don't believe that we'll see any reform to 280E until we get off of Schedule 1.
Yeah. Well, think about it this way: on the same day that we had a
They're tying together. Right.
Yeah.
Tying together. That's
We're
the problem.
filing for a refund, and we're going to probably take something through the tax court.
There you go. I like
Wow,
that.
cool. I like doing it that way.
We'll follow right behind you.
You got it. We'll help.
Think about it this way, though, to tell you how powerful the issue is right now in D.C., and how it's kind of elevated from like a Tier 3 issue to a Tier 1 issue, especially with all the ballot initiatives. On the same day that they initiated an inquiry into impeach a Republican president, 91 Republicans came across the aisle in the House to vote in favor of SAFE. When I was doing my vote count, watching it, we had it at 40, and we were going to spike the football, and it just kept going. So it's a real issue, but we've just got a little bit of mechanics to deal with.
And that was a very important message to see that number of Republicans voting in favor. Yes, sir.
From our standpoint, we chose indoor from the beginning. Our license is under Plants of Ruskin, which is a greenhouse operation. So we had 20 acres of greenhouses, but we just felt that for a medical quality plant, that indoors was a better way to go in order to be able to completely control our environment. That's not to say that you can't do it in greenhouses, because you can. I think that, at least from our standpoint, we feel like you get a much more consistent crop and control all the elements much better on an indoor grow.
I inherited a greenhouse facility, so we've done our best to, with operational upgrades to make it work. I agree that, that's why we're focused on Indiantown on building an indoor facility. I mean, the nice part about a greenhouse, you harness the sunlight. We have plenty of sunlight. Problem with sunlight is in 7 months of year you have plenty of heat, and then you've got plenty of air conditioning you got to put in. So it's a bit of a constant battle. My grow team's done a great job. They've been able to get THC percentages up north of 27-28% out of greenhouse, which is great. But I couldn't agree with you more. I think indoors where you can ultimately control the environment. And our partners in Humboldt, which is known as the best sun-grown cannabis in the world, have taken the best strains and practices and procedures out of the outdoor world and moved them into the indoor world, just so that they can control the variables, because different phenos are going to respond differently.
Yeah, we do a mixture as well. And so what I can say is that we started with indoor, and we started with very controlled indoor in smaller rooms, because we wanted to make sure that we understood and were learning, and that also we had complete control over a certain square footage in the event that there, in our learning process, that there were any issues that we ran into, it would be very contained in a contained environment. As we've progressed, and again, as the program has progressed, so your one question that I want to make sure I get to is strains and kind of the selection there. Initially, we were all growing just for biomass, because it was a 100% oil market, and so it's really about high yield, heavy hitters, high oil output strains. Okay, now that we've moved to a mixture between oil products and flower, that's changed a bit, and so our strain selection has changed a bit. We only grow premium flower indoor. We do have greenhouse grow for biomass, and we have actually learned over time that certain strains that struggle indoor, we put them in the greenhouses and they do amazingly well. And so we do have a whole matrix that we've developed over the last 3 years with respect to genetics that perform in our opinion, better in a sunlight-driven environment as opposed to an indoor environment, and then vice versa. But indoor gives you more control. You certainly have all of your environmental factors, as Brady mentioned, your humidity, your heat levels, airflow, et cetera, are controlled indoor versus via greenhouse.
Is there a significant difference in cost of production?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Significant. I mean, it's about let's see, rough math. It's about a quarter of the cost to grow on a per gram basis in a greenhouse than it is to grow indoor. So it's significantly less expensive. However, again, we're just not comfortable with the quality that you're going to get from a flower that's grown in a greenhouse environment in Florida, vis-a-vis the quality that we're able to get from indoor. Yeah, yield difference is going to depend more. That's going to depend more on the strain. I mean, I think in general you're going to get less yield from a greenhouse than you would indoor, generally speaking. But again, it's very strain specific. So we can put certain, again, those genetics that I was talking about, that we've got, the strains that do, in our opinion, better from a greenhouse perspective. We can get twice the yield in a greenhouse than we can indoor. So it really, that's going to be very strain specific.
What's interesting, though, one point, Kim, and you just brought it up.
Yep.
We set this up as an oil. Florida was originally oil, which if you look at the legislature's position when you all are writing your letters to your legislators, as Kim asked, they set this state up for only the vape.
Right.
Vape. And now they're trying to limit flower THC percentages, even though we're in the middle of this vape issue. So just remind them that when they originally set the system up, it was only to vape.
Well, nobody's ever alleged that there's anything consistent.
I don't know that I would take that angle, to be clear.
Hold on. We got some. Yeah, go ahead, guys.
Thanks for your participation. Do you see any event short of full legalization, such as the passage of the States Act, which will move the opinion of U.S. exchanges and allow companies to list on U.S. exchanges, or is it going to be fully legalized?
if you can get through the compliance department without it being the States Act, I'll be right behind you. Ultimately, there's not an investment bank in Manhattan that doesn't want this business on U.S. soil. There's not an exchange. I've met with all the exchanges in the U.S. They want us badly. Unfortunately, when there's a paramount federal law that still says we're technically next to heroin and we're technically something that's a controlled one substance, they're not going to put it on the exchange, even if they had 2,000 pages of risk disclosures.
Yeah,
it's
and
just not going to happen.
Just to back that up, I mean, what I can tell you that's interesting that's happened over the last, I would say, 3 months for us is we're getting a ton of inbounds from analysts, from U.S. analysts who are coming, they're touring, they want to cover us, they're launching coverage. So there is definitely this buzz on Wall Street that something is changing with respect to their, folks' ability to participate in markets. And so I do think that folks are poising and posturing, and that we're going to see more and more research coverage reports on U.S.-based companies in anticipation of something happening. But I agree with the comment that I don't think that, short of again either states or something similar, I don't know that we're going to see any movement there.
Yeah, I think
Yes, go ahead.
I think that the big issue is that as more and more states come online, the federal government is feeling pressure to legalize. It's a short horizon at this point.
Just that nothing moves quickly in Congress. Go ahead.
Hi, quick question. We ran out of power in Quincy, so we had to move. So, I will tell you that we work very, very closely with our utility providers. It's a co-op there, so it's a little bit of a different structure there, and we actually moved 2 counties over to get out of that regime a bit. But power is a real need, right? I mean, it's a huge part of our business, and if we don't have power, we can't continue to expand. So, I mean,
very power thirsty industry.
Yeah, I will say from our standpoint, we're with Tampa Electric, and TECO has been fantastic.
I'll say the same thing.
They have actually put us on 2 separate grids, even though we're in one single location, so that we would have some redundancy of power. And my contractors actually lean on me whenever we need the next transformer, because they say, I can get it done quicker than they can. And obviously that's all a part of the usage that we have. So they've been very friendly to us.
FP&L has been very good too with our Indiantown facility. So we are FPL at Indiantown, and they've been tremendous.
We have time for one last question. Good, yes.
I think that probably the most likely path is via the States Act, which is, it's very much, I think the most analogous industry to cannabis is going to be alcohol in terms from a regulatory perspective, and when you're thinking about it from Congress. And I want to go back to the comment that I just mentioned a few minutes ago with respect to what you have is you have state programs that have been very driven by very powerful members of legislatures and or governors, and they're very folks are very attached to those programs. So I think that the most likely path is that you're going to still have through the States Act, right? It basically states that at the federal level that they are going to embrace and approve state regulated programs. And so I think similar to alcohol, you're going to have definitely differences from state to state with respect to distribution channels, particularly how product can move. I mean, you see what's happening currently with hemp across the country and how different states are responding differently to implementation of those programs within their state borders, and whether or not product must be grown in those states or not, and how that will all work out. And so I think that it's not going to be, I would be very surprised if there's an overnight all of a sudden we can all buy cannabis on Amazon. Like, that would be awesome, but I don't know that that's going to necessarily happen. And so I think that you're going to have a stepped implementation of legalization, which I think that is probably the way that it's going to pass Congress, because I think they're going to be hearing from their individual states, and that their states are still going to want a voice with respect to how those programs are implemented.
If you look at insurance, I think it's insurance or it's alcohol. McCarran-Ferguson deregulated it from the federal level, put it to the state level. Each state can make that morality decision and implement their own rules. The key, though, the most important thing is the States Act says, if you are complying with your state law, your activities are now excluded from Schedule 1. That's all that matters.
And we all agree that but that does not allow you still to cross state boundaries. And so when we see, I think we can all agree that when we see a federal legalization and a removal from Schedule 1, it's an entire game changer for everybody's company, and the business models even will change at that point.
100%.
By the way, I will say kudos to Florida for not charging sales tax on this
Big time.
medicine.
Big time.
At least that makes sense on medical. Panel, Kim, Brady, John, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
I think the audience really appreciate it. Let's show them a round of applause. Thank you.